Hello, it's HP and welcome to another installment of the miracle of being human. There's so much that I want to share, and oftentimes I feel like, trying to refrain from actually delivering too much so that you're not drinking out of a fire hose. And then I get reminded actually that all of you already have the tools to be able to solve your own emotional blocks. And it's simply a matter of just guiding you so that you can find where the genesis event actually is. So today I wanted to share more of a overview so that you can get a bit of an appreciation of what happens, how things evolve, and what it is that you should be looking for. I've had a lot of mental health training, and to be honest, when I first started the entire journey, I despised mental health. I didn't think it was a real thing. I thought that people who suffered anxiety were just not thinking straight. People who were depressed were just ignoring things that were good in their lives. I did not consider that they were legitimate conditions. That was very narrow-minded of me. But life has a very interesting way of actually showing us when we need help the most. So what happened was that I kept getting presented with people with mental health concerns, people with anxiety, depression, and after several months of finding them at my doorstep and being unable to help them, I said enough is enough. And I said, okay, universe, you clearly think that this is something that I should be doing. Show me the path. Right. And so I began this journey of education. I went through the traditional mental health training within a medical model. And then after that, there seemed to be different breadcrumbs that were left in my consciousness. And so I went off and then did psychosynthesis, and I went to quantum energy coaching. And then from there, I got a whole bunch of other therapies, and it started to actually make sense. And I remember the day where it finally clicked, and then it's not so much that the penny dropped, but what happened was that I could see these actual methods, techniques were actually helping get people somewhere. So then I became obsessed of understanding, right, what is it that actually helps? Right? So traditionally, with regards to talk therapy, we'd identify a problem, then we'll try to logically work through it, trace it back, figure out what the event actually is, and then go, okay, if we had made a different choice, then we would have ended up in a different place. And that would work sometimes, but what would happen is that there was no staying power. Most people could consciously hold that for a period of time, and then after that, they would just revert to what it is that they had been doing previously. And I was very frustrated because I couldn't understand why that was happening. And then I drawed on my neuroscience training, and it became very clear. The conscious mind can hold 40 to 60 bits of information, whereas your subconscious mind can hold 11 million bits of information. So we literally have to filter out 99.9995% of the information to be able to function, right? At the moment while you're listening to me, you're not adjusting your blood pressure. You're not helping your heartbeat. You are not making sure that capillaries are squished in certain parts so that bloods get to different areas. You are not exchanging air inside your lungs and controlling the contractions of the diaphragm. You're not even activating any of the muscles inside the ears to make sure that it's tuned to be able to hear my voice and tune out other things if you are just focused on what it is that I'm delivering. All of these things make for an enormous amount of information. And guess what? When we suffer some kind of heightened emotional state, whether it be good, bad, then that leaves an imprint on the body. And there are lots of previous books that have been written on this. The body keeps score, the emotion code, there's a whole bunch of stuff. And being able to understand that, okay, right, given that the information is always there and that the information that gets imprinted upon the body cannot leave if it doesn't get processed, then it is up to us to be able to find a way to help move that. Right? So when you think about emotions, what are emotions really? Emotions are very simply, in my definition, energy in motion, right? Anger is a high energy in motion. Sadness is low energy in motion, maybe slow motion, right? But any form of emotion that you can think of is a form of energy. And that energy needs to be able to travel, and it needs to be able to complete its cycle. So if you imagine, for argument's sake, that energy is coming in from the top and is able to be discharged from your legs, then once that cycle is completed, that energy is gone. However, if the energy comes in and then it's stuck and it's going around in circles, then now we develop a blockage and something happens further into the future. This may be a physical symptom, maybe an emotional symptom, maybe a behavior, a habit. So the way that it actually presents itself is going to be different in different individuals, right? And that is the basis of thinking about, okay, if I have a particular emotion that is unpleasant that keeps surfacing, what is it trying to tell me? And so the journey essentially looks like this. You have something that has happened here in your life, and let's say this is the present and that is the past. So in the present, something is happening and then it is triggering you and it is causing you to feel a whole bunch of different things. That is not the issue. Let's say someone pisses you off and then you get angry. It's not that the person did something that made you angry. It is that you had determined that anger was the appropriate response for the input that you received. Well, where did you learn that? You learned that somewhere in the past. And where did you learn that? You learned that somewhere in the past. And if you kept going back in time, you eventually reach the point whereby prior to this point, you were not able to receive that input, which would then lead to anger. You had to learn a set of behaviors or rules to be made up, which would say, hey, when someone does X, Y, and Z, that is going to result in me becoming angry. And this Genesis event is always a protective event. It doesn't happen for no reason. It happens because we need to protect ourselves. Some massive emotional event happened. It came in, the energy got stuck inside our body. As a young person, we didn't have the faculties to be able to rationalize, think about it, actually understand what it was doing. So we made up a very quick rule by looking at our environment and then going, okay, what tools do I have? What can I actually enact that would keep me safe if this ever happened again, right? And then boom, that gets locked in, it becomes unconscious, and then you repeat that throughout your life. So the process that I take people through via a range of different methods is essentially finding what is making you upset, uncomfortable, and then helping you time travel back, finding the Genesis event, and then solving the actual root cause, and then allowing your mind to then cascade that change throughout the entire life forward. Now, that sounds pretty crazy, but essentially what happens, because when you actually are able to solve the Genesis event, then something miraculous happens, and that is your mind no longer has the previous programming, therefore it reacts differently and it goes back in time and reorganizes your memories until you get to your present state. Which means even when you think back about things that make you angry previously, they will have a very different emotional content or resonance. So I think that lays it out nicely. Just something for you to kind of ponder, think about. Whenever you come across something that is uncomfortable, what is it that had helped you form that belief? What has shown you that this is the way that you should actually respond or react? And if you can trace it all the way back, you will find the answer to that particular question. Just to make this process a little easier, try and stay away from the context when you are moving back in time. And what I mean by that is, for example, let's say anger is a problem and we're going back in time and say, when was the last time you felt anger? Last year. Okay, good. I just need a very small snippet. Last year this happened and this is why I got angry. Good. Okay, when else before that have I gotten angry? Okay, when I was 12 years old, this happened, I got angry. Okay, good. When else have I gotten angry before that? When I was 8 years old. When people re-traumatize themselves, it's because they go back to a point in time in the past and then they stew on the context. This person did this, it made me feel this way, and I remember X, Y, and Z, and they get so worked up, they basically re-engage that emotional circuit, and it just goes around and around, right? So now you've solidified it even further to go, okay, next time I have the outlet, I'm just gonna explode out. So instead of allowing that to happen, now you have a way to actually trace it back without emotionally engaging, because you just go, okay, this is when, okay, good, and then I jump again and jump again and jump again, right? So would love to hear what you actually are able to do with this. Notice that you haven't learned any way to actually solve it, because the solving requires a unique set of skills, which you currently do not have. But this is a way for you to very quickly identify issues and then find the cause, so that we're able to bring it out and then work on it. I look forward to having our next chat. It's been a pleasure, and have a wonderful day.